time.
Got it.
All right, here we go. Another Square Dance Callers Talking. Tonight, I have a lady from the West Coast. She is in California. I met her several years ago at different conventions and whatnot, since we are so far apart, separated by the coast, because I'm on the East Coast, of course. Tonight, I have a recording artist. I have a record label owner. I have Shauna Kaaria. How are you, ma'am?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing very good. It's great to talk to you. We've talked in the past. We've known each other for a little while. So how have you been?
I've been well. We're having a little heat wave here. So
Yeah, I think everybody is. I went to the beach last week, and it's the first time I laid on the beach, and I thought, this is the hottest wind I've ever been around. And we were down in Florida.
really,
So,
humidity there?
yeah. Now in Atlanta, where I am, the humidity's not as bad. But when you get, I'm actually from Savannah, and so I had to go. I went down over the weekend. I went to Florida first, and then I came back up through Savannah to see my mother and mother-in-law. And Savannah is on the coast, and it is just miserable with the humidity and all that and the heat. And so we lasted about a day before we got out of there and came back to Atlanta, where it's just hot. So I guess it's just not as humid, but it's still miserably hot.
We don't get much humidity here usually. So
okay. Well, where are you in California?
At least it's a dry heat, right?
Yes, at least it's a dry heat. I thought that until I went to New Mexico a couple of years ago, and I thought, I don't care if it's dry heat or not, it's hot.
It's still hot.
So, where are you in California?
We're in Southern California. Redlands is the town. Redlands it's a quaint little town, very old. Some of the buildings around here are 150 years old. The high school has been graduating classes since the 1890s. Lots of tradition, lots of old houses. It's just a very nice family community. The only thing about it is it gets warm in the summer. We're about an hour west of Palm Springs, so we don't get as hot as Palm Springs, but the beauty is an hour to the beach, an hour up to the mountains, an hour to Disneyland.
Very nice.
We're close to a lot of fun things.
Yeah, I've had the opportunity to go to Disneyland once. We spent a week there about 4 years ago now. Loved it, but that's as much as I can say about California, because we got on a plane and left after that. So we drove through parts of California just to the airport, LAX and back. So
okay, was this when you went to Hawaii?
It was. Yep, it was.
Okay, I listened to another podcast. And
okay,
yeah, left the airport.
Yeah, we made that it was our 30th wedding anniversary, my wife and I, and so we did Hawaii, came back and did I think 5 days at Disney. And then flew out, and a lot of fun. Really enjoyed it. And from what I saw of California, it was quite nice. Now, at some point we'll get back. I don't know, but luckily we were also there before anybody had probably even had heard of it. But there were no COVID masks or anything. We were probably about 2 months prior to that, so it was free run. It was a good time out there, and we had no restrictions, so it was nice. All right, so you're in Southern California. I don't think I've ever. I've spoke to a couple other callers from California, but like I said, I didn't know anybody in California before I started Square Dance Calling and meeting y'all. So, how long have you been Square Dance Calling?
Shoot, I went to caller school. Well, the story goes back a little further.
Okay, go ahead.
To get to the real story, goes back a little further. I didn't really square dance until my senior year in high school. My parents danced, my sister danced, and I took a class my senior year in high school, went through, graduated, and then never went dancing again. And about that time picked up clogging classes with my sister, who had discovered that through square dancing as well. Clogging had been introduced out here in 76 at the National Convention in Anaheim, and it kind of took off pretty quickly. So I started teaching clogging and doing exhibitions and taught clogging for many years. While my parents still square danced. And then, gosh, fast forward a number of years later, 1997, got back into square dancing again. I was teaching clogging classes still. Dawn Mee was also teaching clogging classes, David Mead's wife. They lived around the corner from where I lived at that time, wasn't married to Vic then. And I learned to dance again in David Mee's garage.
Okay.
So we had a square of me and my son, my ex-husband. There were 8 of us. Their 2 daughters were learning. So I had a fast track lesson in the garage. We started in early February, went dancing in mid-February. That's how fast track it was.
Very nice.
In the new dancer hall.
Okay.
Do plus by April at the state convention. But because I had danced before, it came back pretty readily. And then a few years later, my husband and I had split. I'd crossed paths with Vic along the way, over the years. My sister knew him, 20 years ago. And we just crossed paths in the dancing world and said, hey, let's go dance. And I told him, good, not interested in a relationship. We're just going to go dance. We were married 3 months later.
Nice. Okay.
So that we're just going to be friends worked out very well for us.
I see that. Yeah. Fantastic. Very good.
And so at that point, I wasn't doing clogging as much. And so I started queuing rounds because then I could work with him more. And the timing for queuing for clogging and rounds are kind of similar. There's more to say with rounds, but the timing of it is similar. So I made that transition pretty easily. And that was in 1999. And then 2007, I'm trying to get my years right, Vic decided he was going to teach a collar school. He's a great teacher. And he and Phil Farmer ran a school. And I thought, well, shoot, I'm going to be there. I might as well take the class, right? So I went to that school. The first assignment was to do a singing call, and I refused. I was not going to sing in front of anyone. Not happening. But the next day, I plucked my first chicken, and that was all very interesting to me. And for graduation, I said, okay, I'll sing, but only if Vic sings with me. And man, it was a long time before I would do anything but sing with Vic, because I could harmonize all day long, but I didn't want to sing by myself. It's just not my game.
Now, had you done any singing beforehand, before square dancing?
Yeah. Shoot. Through church, we started singing, at the age of 3.
All right.
And then school choir, age of 11 is when I was introduced to my first harmony. And then I started singing in choirs, at that point. So I've sung my whole life. I was in a group called the Grandland Singers for a few years post high school. And we kind of toured across the country some, and mostly did local shows, singing and dancing. And for me, the dancing was the most fun part of it, but we sang parts. I sang alto, so I've always sung harmony. Harmony was where I lived. So this lead singing was foreign at the time. So yeah, I could sing, but I wasn't a singer. Does that make sense?
It does. It does.
So I graduated that class, and that was 2007. And then I started doing guest tips with Vic here and there and subbing for him here and there. And I picked up my first class in 2011. And a year later, I had 3 classes, and I had joined Callerlab by then, and things just kind of went crazy.
Okay.
It just kind of took off.
That's the way it looks from what I know about you now. So you start around 2011. You join Callerlab, and you've taught some classes. Currently, I mean, do you have some clubs now? What are you doing now?
I'm teaching 2 nights a week. I teach 2 nights a week. One club is great. It's 5 minutes from home, so I just tootle on over there, and it's 5 minutes there and back, and it's a nice club. Been teaching for them probably, going on 10 years almost.
Wow, very nice.
Yeah, and I'm teaching their president how to call. He was at the GSI school this year.
Who was that?
I don't know if you remember meeting Bill Hunt. So he's doing a great job learning to call. And then the other club is on Thursdays. It's out in Anaheim. We get to hear the Disneyland fireworks as class ends.
Very nice. Okay.
So about an hour away to get there.
So are you a regular Disneyland goer or no?
I had my love affair with Disneyland for a while.
Okay.
I bought an annual pass. I'm going to go back to about 2007, 2008, and started going a lot. In fact, I tracked it. I'm a data girl. It's not going to surprise anyone. But I tracked how often we went, and sometimes twice a week, because I would just go after work and zip down there. When you have the pass back then, you could just go in anytime. So you didn't feel bad if you just went for a couple hours, because you didn't spend all that money on it. you know, as you know, you spend $100 a day, you feel like you want to get your money's worth, you know. But I got locked into the pin trading.
Did you? Oh, okay.
So I had lanyards of pins and then books of pins, and I would go for the pin trading events, and it just got out of hand. I even had a t-shirt that said, "We'll trade husband for Disney pins."
I understand that completely. My wife and I are big Disney people. Of course, we go to Disney World, being in Georgia.
Yeah, I've
And
never been there.
is that you've never been? Wow.
Never been to, well, see, I grew up in the shadow of Disneyland. So
Yeah,
Disneyland is my place. It's the original, the OG, whatever. I
yeah,
grew up watching the Disney, you know, Sunday night Disney shows and listening to Walt tell his stories. So, you know,
yeah. It was, when we finally got to go, we went on our honeymoon in, uh, we got married in '89. We went on our honeymoon to Disney. My wife was a fan before me. I didn't go as a child, so I didn't know about it. And we went, just had the best time. And we went for several years. And then our son was born. We waited till he was 4 before we went again,
yeah,
because I wasn't going to, I was always the one saying, why are you bringing an infant here?
right.
And so then we started going, since it was 4.5 hours from Savannah. So it was an easy ride on the weekends.
Yeah.
So we went so much, and we enjoyed it. But now it's 9 hours or 8.5, so we don't go as often.
Okay.
Of course, our son's 32 years old now, so it's just my wife and I. And people don't understand that either. They're like, why are you going without kids? And I was like, it's more fun without kids
Right.
because you don't have to
There's so
tote a
many, I don't know
stroller.
about Disney World, but there's so many behind the scenes
Mhm.
places to look, little gems, especially, you know, I could spend all day just wandering around looking at stuff.
Yeah,
When I
there,
saw the
there
pins, I'm
is.
like, rides here? I have no
There-
idea.
when you're not toting strollers and diaper bags and all that, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
You're just in there and out, and so it's a good time. Well, whenever Callerlab or something is in Florida, you need to plan on going to Disney.
Yeah, we actually have kids living in Orlando now, so we're gonna make a trip
There's
out
no
there.
excuse. There,
No
you have to
excuse.
go.
I know.
Um, all right. So we both have a love for Disney. That's great. I've got to stop saying fantastic all the time. It's great to have that. So back to the square dance calling. So you said you started out doing chicken plucker, which all the
Yep.
callers know what that is and the process involved with that. And that was around 2007 when you were doing the schools.
Yep.
Now, since you've got some years of calling, and what do you are you a memory person? You said you're data, or you're a sight caller. How do you approach a dance?
I approach the dance. It depends on the club. A lot of times. I don't know in your area, but in our area, we've got clubs that are great dancers and clubs that are not just octogenarians, they're even
Mhm. No,
older.
yep, I
So
agree.
it kind of depends on the club and whether I'm going to baby them a little or try to push them. So but generally I have modules. I have at the color school that my biggest takeaway from that was how to create a guest tip,
Mhm.
one that you memorize, you commit to memory, that there are things you can pull in and out of it to change it, whether it's mainstream or plus or whatever. And that tool has served me well still today,
Yep, fantastic.
putting that tool together. And it's kind of similar to doing at the GSI with those little Build-A-Bear kind of
Mhm.
cars
Yeah,
that
yeah.
we've been using, because that's what it is. Get them in, do the chicken plucker, take them to a line, bring them back, in all those things. But it's those modules that do it and do it one way and then resolve and then do it another way. So I still use that. I use modules at class, and where I call more, I'm sight calling. I'm teaching them
Right.
things and moving around to make sure everybody gets every part they need to learn. So I mostly cite. As long as I remember to write it down or remember where they are, I typically don't miss a corner unless something has gone awry. So as long as I know where they belong, I can get them back. Now it may be predictable sometimes, depending on how much of a hurry I am, and
Right.
whether the module has gone out. But
Okay. Gotcha. So besides Vic, obviously, since he was your first caller school, who were some of the other influences even before you started calling that you kind of wanted to pattern yourself after, that type of thing?
when I learned to call, I mean, when I learned to dance again, David Mee, I told you, taught me. So he and Don, my ex-husband and I would travel with them to dances. So I learned a lot from David Mee. And then it was kind of funny because when Vic and I got together years later, I'm like, these two call very similarly. And Vic's like, yeah, David mentored under me. And
Oh,
so
okay.
it made sense that they taught similar and, so
Very
I found
nice.
that interesting. But David has been very helpful. He was a great teacher. Teaching is one of my favorite things to do, whether it was clogging or round dancing or I just love to teach. Um, it's where I feel comfortable. I don't have confidence issues when I'm teaching. I
Good. Good.
sometimes do, depending who I'm getting on the stage with, or
Yeah.
what I'm being asked to sing, but not where teaching is concerned. I love to teach. So David, I'm trying to think, blessed here in Southern California. I think Charlie said that too. There are some great callers here in Southern California. And, Deborah was in Southern California back then.
Okay.
She
I
learned
didn't
to
know
call
that.
here.
Okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah, she learned to call here. In fact, the club that I'm teaching for now on Thursdays, the president of that club is the widow of the caller who mentored Deborah the most, Lee Schmidt. His wife, Gloria, is the president of the club. And he taught the class that she went to, and she started asking questions. And he'd say, "You're asking caller questions, not dancer questions." And encouraged her because she could sing. Obviously, she could sing. But I guess she had her challenges with, they call it the Good Old Boys Network. I think that is more to do with the booking people for callers rather than the callers, because callers in the area stood up for her and went to bat for her, because there was one organization said, "We don't care how good she is, she's not going to call here."
Wow.
Say hi to Vic. Vic just walked in the door. Say hi to Charlie.
Charlie, what do you know?
How are you, Vic? Good to see you, man.
Charlie Petrie. You don't look like Shirley Robinson.
Can't be seen. You gotta come
Yeah,
down.
Oh wait, this is just my white shirt.
I see that.
Yeah.
No, Charlie Robertson is now C1 and I'm C2. We've decided to go by those names now.
Okay. So you call a higher level than Charlie?
Absolutely not.
Excellent.
That's why he's one. How have you been, sir? How have you been?
Been good. I don't mean to interrupt your.
Oh no, that's good.
Come in and say hi.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we'll go get comfortable.
Okay. Carry on, you two. Carry
All right. Good seeing you, Vic. Okay.
So I think I was talking about Deborah, but there was one organization, it was a big festival down here. And it wasn't the kind of festival where they really just hired callers. It was more the local callers who would come in, but they had to audition first. And she went and auditioned, and then we kind of said, they said, "We don't care how good she is, she's not going to call." And the callers in the area around her, Lee Schmidt, Vic, Dave Rensberger, some of the others said, "If she doesn't call, we're not calling." And they stood up for her, got her on that program. So, and in my experience now, I have not felt any of those barriers that I think maybe earlier female callers had to break for me.
Yeah.
But especially not with my caller compadres.
Yeah, no, I mean, I see where that might have been, earlier on. And especially when you look at, when I go to Callerlab or something like that, and I see some of the pictures, I mean, there weren't a lot of women at the time, and I'm sure that was for different reasons, whether it be right or wrong. And I'm sure a lot of it was wrong just because no matter who you are, how good you are, you're not calling here, which, is unheard of now. But
Yeah,
I can absolutely see how that might have been before. When I started, I've been dancing a long time, but when I started calling around 2010, 2011, in Georgia, where I'm at, until I went to a Callerlab convention, I figured there had to be women callers, but I'd never seen any or heard any, because in the little group that I was in Georgia, there were none, but there were none that were trying to be, that I know of.
Right.
So I just never, and then when I started going to Callerlab, I was like, oh, there's a lot of women in here. And I mean, and I enjoyed dancing to them and listening to them and talking to them and meeting them and all that. So Callerlab certainly opened that up for me, and traveling around now, because I do get around a little bit calling. So certainly glad y'all are doing it. It's a pleasure listening to y'all. And on that note, you've gone beyond the calling part of it. You have Chic Records. Is that correct?
Chic Recordings, yes.
Chic Recordings. Okay.
I don't make records.
Oh, well, did you ever make records? How long have you been doing it? Did you make records?
No. So here's the timeline. I went to caller school in 2007, really started calling in 2011, recorded my first song that was my song in 2014. That was with Fine Tune. Talking about mentors, Rick Hampton is on that list as well.
Okay.
Along with, for a while from 2013 to 2015, I was in a square dance band. Charlie Robertson was originally in that band, and then he got too busy, and I could play a bass, and I could call. The shtick of the band was your musicians are your callers, and so there were 4 of us callers who were in the band, and I played the bass. And so Pat Carnathan and Vic Carey and Mike Hayworth and Charlie, all great mentors for me. And then as I got into the recording side, see, the recording piece doesn't begin with Rick. It begins with Vic, because back when I was learning with David, he was recording with Shakedown Records back at the time, and so was Vic and Pat too. So when Vic and I got married and went to the studio for the first time, he was working with Rick then with Fine Tune and Goldwing and some of those things. And I would go sit in the studio with just my jaw down, watching the magic of it all. And you've been to a studio, you know.
Yep.
And it's a very different process, the Nashville process versus this process, but it's still so cool to watch. And I was fascinated by, how do you choose a song, and how do you decide how you want to arrange it, and all those things, and what makes a good song for square dancing and what doesn't. And that's very personal. Some producers think differently than others. But I really learned a lot from Vic where that was concerned. And that's really what met Rick. Rick had a goal to be, the Women in Calling does do a survey every few years of favorite singing calls. And Rick wanted Fine Tune, a Fine Tune song on the Women in Calling's list.
Okay.
And so he decided to create this female vocal project idea. And so we were sitting at the Callerlab in Reno in 2014, getting ready to leave for the convention, waiting for shuttles. And poor pitiful me comes over the loudspeaker. And he says, "Would this work?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I think it would." And he said, "Would you sing it?" And I said, yes, without thinking. I should have thought, because I was terrified when the time came. But so I arranged that for him and went to the studio, and we did 2. We took another one that had been done and added new live instruments and repitched the things that were digital, and we released It's So Easy and Poor Pitiful Me. And then I spent the next year pretty much arranging everything that Fine Tune and Goldwing did. Rick would ask me if something would work, and I put it together. I got to cut my teeth on that piece of it, and did quite a few with him in the female range. And at that point, I'm like, I'm not satisfied enough. I need my own baby.
Okay.
And thought about it. And when I decided to do it, nothing but support from Rick, other producers. Scott Bennett was very helpful. When I wanted a logo done, I knew that I wanted the I in Chic to be a microphone and the chord to trail down and to spell recordings a little bit. And I had hired someone to draw it, and that was going nowhere. And he sends me this email with a little graphic. I'm like, how the heck did you do that? That he had started something. And so I'm like, don't just do this for me. Show me how to do it. And so I took what he had done and built on it and was able to create the logo I had in my mind.
Oh, so you made it. Very nice.
So I made it, but not without Scott's help to begin with. Had that Chic with the recordings was him. And then we laid in the microphone, and then I built the keyboard around it, some other things. But I learned so much about what you could do in Microsoft Publisher. Huge help there. And Chic recordings, I like that Chic is fashionable and tasteful and trendy, as is, but people would call it chick. And no, hey, it's the girl's label. Being the only female producer.
I can't prove it, but the first time I saw it, I said that's Chic recordings. I knew what it
I
was, but
believe
yeah,
you.
but I know people that would look at it and say that's chick, and then they find out it's your label, and they're like, well, is that because she's a girl? I don't know, but no, Chic, and I really like that name. I really do. I didn't realize when I was talking to Scott, and he was telling me. I mean, I know his labels. I've gotten several of his songs, Acme, Crest, and Peak. He said when I decided on that, it's because they're all the top. And I thought, I've never
Yeah.
thought of it that way. And, I was
Yeah.
like, the crest
As
is
I
the
was
top.
talking to him and he was coming up with Peak, I'm like, well, Crest, Acme, Peak.
That,
Well, and then you put them together and it spells CAP, C-A-P.
yeah, cap. I mean,
You
that's,
got a fourth. That's the kind of brain.
I mean, that's just, that's brilliance when you see stuff like that. That's great. So do you know how many songs you've recorded now yourself?
Oh, gosh. I was keeping track. I don't know. Otherwise, I could pull up the file and tell you because I am a data girl.
Yeah.
But it's a lot now, and not just on. I've recorded for Fine Tune. I've done backgrounds for a lot of labels. I've done backgrounds on Blue Star and Hi-Hat and Rhythm and Lumac and Crown, New Beat. I just blows my mind. I sit here and go, how did I get here?
That's all.
You know?
That's great. With and I try not to with the record label, recording label owners. What are some of your favorite singing calls? I'm not going to ask for your favorite because I'm sure you've got a few being they're yours and you've produced and made a lot for others. What are some of yours, just three that you like to do yourself?
Myself, I love, it depends on what just by myself with no one else. One of my favorites is, probably won't surprise you, it's a Disney song, Great Big Beautiful Tomorrow.
Yes.
Released just a couple years ago, but it's the theme song from the Carousel of Progress.
Carousel of Progress, one of my favorite rides.
It is such an earworm, and it's not here anymore. That's why I got to go to Florida. But it is such an earworm. Jimmy, my engineer, is like, I thought Small World was an earworm. Two weeks later, he's still waking up with that song in his head. But it's just so catchy. It's still, lyrics are on point for right now. And I always get a good reaction. So I like to do that. As far as duets go, one of my favorites is the second song Chic ever released, and that's a summer song. And it's one of those songs that you don't know by the title. You have to listen to the song to know it, you know, because the title words are not in the song anywhere. But it's the Chad and Jeremy song about trees swaying in the summer breeze. And I did that duet with Mike Hayworth on Chic. It was the second song we ever released, and I still get a lot of play with that because it just, the dancers know it. It's laid back. It dances nice. It's one of my favorites to do too. I recorded one for Rhythm, which was a thrill for me. Boats to Build. Wade gave that one to me because we got our lake here and we have a boat that we go out on. And he's like, "You like boats?" Yeah, I like boats. But it turned out to be really fun. I had never heard the song. He sent it to me and I said, okay, I would love to do this, but this range isn't going to work. And I showed him where it should be. And if you wanted in my sweet spot, here's where you have to go. And it damaged some of the music because he didn't have it replayed. But my engineer played over some of it to create it in the proper, to make it sound good again, where it wasn't working. And it's one of my favorites, called Boats to Build. It's a Jimmy Buffett. Who's the other guy? The country song.
I'll have to see if I can buy that. And I told you I've got a luau dance tomorrow.
Oh yeah, Boats
and that's a recipe for disaster. Me getting a song and trying it the next day. So I have to look.
Alan Jackson and Jimmy Buffett sang it together. I'd never heard before, but it's really fun. And I don't know if you know this, but Wade is picky. He's very demanding as a producer. He's very demanding as a coach. Having worked with him coaching, I just love to just sit. He has been, like I told you, I had a lot of support when I first launched Chic. Got the logo done, and when I got the website, I hadn't started it yet, but I posted on Facebook. I created my Chic page and posted it, and immediately I got a message from Wade that said, "You need any help, you just let me know." I'm like, you didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
And then it was 11 songs in. I asked him, I had a question about arrangement. I knew he cared about the song. And he's like, don't ask if you don't want the answer. I'm like, no, I really do. And we chatted and I took his advice, went my own way. And one of my favorite lines is so true. It's a Wade thing. He's like, at the end of the day, your checkbook, your decision. You get to make those choices, make those calls where the music is concerned, because you're the one whose money is behind it. And whoever you're talking to, whether it's your engineer or your vocalist, your checkbook, your decision. And if it needs more time, spend the time to make it right. But Wade jumped in and has started mentoring me, very quickly after I started. Just been a great friend. Tony as well. And then when Ted jumped into the fray, Ted and I were kind of the new kids.
All right.
At that point.
Yeah. So
it was a risk. It was a risk to do. And as you know, everything I do twice. Not the patterns, but I do it twice. So it almost doubles my expense. But it's worth it to me because I can't ignore the men, but I also want to take care of myself as well as the other women.
It's really good music. And coming in when I did, I didn't know about record labels and recording labels and that type of thing. And because when I came in, I was still just a caller would give me a record. He would say, here, you can have this record here, try this, because I didn't own anything. I had a mic and a mic cord. I didn't have, so I would go do guest tips and I'd say, well, what do you have? And they would go through and I'd be like, oh, I know Devil Went Down to Georgia. And they'd say, here, take it home and practice it. And then they would just end up saying, here, keep the record. And so then when I started getting introduced, I think I first came in, I found out about Scott Bennett. And the first Callerlab I went to and met Scott Bennett, it was like I was meeting Steven Tyler from Aerosmith. I was like, oh my God, you're Scott Bennett. And, I might have creeped him out a little bit. I don't know. And, but his music, listening to records when I did, as well as I do, the records, it was good music, but it was all the same. And it sounded like some of it was being played on a keyboard for the most part. And, and they are, but when I started hearing Scott Bennett and the other record labels, when yours came out and everything, that's actual band, it's actual people playing, and it sounds just like the radio version, a lot of them.
Yeah.
And it's such good quality. Some of your patter stuff is just amazing. I picked up a Disney one.
I love my patterns.
It's fantastic. And I picked up a couple from you not long ago. And a while back, I got that Disney one that you put out.
Yep.
It's about 7 minutes long. And it's a lot of the music I pick out is from your label and other labels and recognizable music. And when I've done the Disney patter a couple of times, regardless of where I am, as soon as I put it on and it starts with the bell ringing and the man talking, everybody turns and looks at me like, what is this? And then, it goes, and then they realize, and most people know what Disney is, obviously. And so they start picking up on it. And I'm like, that's what I look for. It obviously not the best caller in the world yet, planning on it one day. But if you have music that will get people's attention, if you have music that will get somebody's attention, then what I do is just a bonus to it. If you get a singing call, Poor Pitiful Me, and now I don't have that one, and I don't know if I would venture to do that. One day, maybe I'll give it a try. I love the song. Who did that? It was, is her name Tracy? What's her name? The country artist.
Pop star, the pop artist?
There was a country artist.
Terry Clark.
Terry Clark. Yes, Terry Clark. That first time I heard that, it was her years ago, and I really loved the song.
Yeah.
And but if you put something like that on, people are going to recognize it immediately. Yep. So you can only go up from that point because it's a song that people like. And so the music you're putting out, the patter and the singing calls is just it's really good. And keep doing it. Absolutely.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Obviously, it's my baby.
I'm sure.
Took a risk creating it, and it is hard to believe. But this year, makes 8 years since I launched Cheek.
Okay.
So it's crazy.
Yeah, I didn't know because I think Reno was one of my first Callerlabs. It wasn't my first, but it was like second or third, I think. I didn't
The
know.
recent one we just had.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because it was the same venue that we sat in that
Oh,
lobby
okay. Okay. So it wasn't. Okay. So.
this was Reno in 2014, same venue.
Oh, okay. I got you.
Yeah, that's in fact where I met Scott Bennett.
Okay. Okay.
So it's kind of funny because I didn't know who he was. I'd never really heard the name other than had recently gotten emails, maybe within a year or so, of, you know, introducing Crest recordings.
All right.
And so I went out and listened to some of the links, and I'm like, wow, this stuff is good, man. This guy can sing, because I kind of get picky. And I'm like, well, that's really nice. And he had done one song that Shakedown had done before, and I don't know whether he knew that. In fact, I found out later that he didn't know that. He might not have done it. But anyway, so Vic, I'm like, Vic, this music is up your alley. You know, it wasn't really in the right key for me. And so we sat down at dinner. I was sitting next to Pat Carnathan. Vic was supposed to go to that Callerlab, and he got sick the day of. And so I went by myself, terrified to be by myself. And Pat Carnathan and Hunter Keller, I told them, you guys save seats for me at dinner. This social setting is not my bag. You just make sure I've got a place to sit. And the first night at dinner, on my right was Scott Bennett, and on my left was Pat Carnathan doing his job.
That's
taking
very
care of me.
good. Very good.
And so I'm visiting with Scott, and I see his shirt, and I'm like, oh, you're Scott Bennett. Aren't you the one who did that? He's like, yep. So that's, it wasn't the same fangirl, because I didn't really know much about it, but I did know the name. I just had never even seen a picture.
And there's not a nicer guy out there than Scott. I mean, he is just awesome. From the day that, like I say, I met him at Callerlab, we've gotten much closer since then over the years. But just, I mean, he's just one of those dudes. As soon as you start talking to him, the smile that he has, it's just awesome to talk to that guy. So super fortunate but you got Pat Carnathan on one side and Scott Bennett. I mean, that's a great duo to be between right there.
Oh, it was a fun dinner.
Just off the top of your head, and this is what I ask everybody, and I get a lot of different answers. What's your favorite call?
My favorite call?
Yeah, just mainstream plus. How high do you call?
Well, I can call some advanced. I'm not proficient at it. That's my next goal. I have danced C3B.
Okay.
So, and I actually have taught C2 classes when I was subbing for Vic back in the day.
Okay.
Put me in a teaching situation and I'm good.
Okay.
But I haven't danced challenge in a while, missed it a little bit. Sometimes I'll see conversations on Facebook that take me back into the choreography puzzle place. But I tell my class every time I teach a class, because my favorite call is a basic call, and it's Grand Square. I loved it from the moment I learned it, and I still do. It drives me nuts that people rush it instead of dance it the way it's meant to be danced. And I teach it and drill them. And then of course they get out to a dance and start rushing it anyway. But something about that, the fact that everyone's working together, and it struck me a little bit of the old Looking Down with the Busby Berkeley movies with the, you know, if you watched it from the top, the way they moved in and out, it's my favorite call, not because it allows me to sing. That's just kind of nice, but I know you can't overuse it because it's not every dancer's favorite call. In fact, most of them, it's their least favorite. But I have to give you that one because that's the one I tell my classes.
No, that it does, and and that's the only thing that some people have told me when I go into caller schools and all that is when it comes to singing calls, you can't do Grand Square all night long. And of course I know that because you don't want to go and do 7 singing calls with 3 Grand Squares in it. So you have to mix in, but it's absolutely, it's really a good call. And if it's a song that needs to be sung, a storytelling song, and I use the examples Brandy, you've got to do Side Space Grand Square doing Brandy, and I do Brandy a lot more than I probably should. But it's a story song, and you've got 3 verses you need to put in there. And there's a handful like that. that you need to get that in. Scott Bennett is big on that because Simple Man. Leonard
Yeah.
Skinner, you have to do Side Space Grand Square because it's a story. And,
Yep.
so, but yeah, it's a really good call. I like that. So you've
And now I
traveled.
just got to stop picking songs with stories.
Yeah.
You know, that's why I love them.
Yeah, no,
Well,
that's
Scott has
fine.
his Bob Seger. I have my Linda Ronstadt. I've recorded a lot of Linda Ronstadt tunes.
Okay.
You know, It's So Easy, Poor Pitiful Me, When Will I Be Loved, You're No Good, quite a few.
So, on that, with those being you liking those artists, if you're not listening to square dance music, what kind of music are you listening to?
Well, it's across the board. I've never gotten into a lot of rap. My kids listen to stuff that just sounds like people yelling, and I've not gotten into that. I can take jazz in small doses, and my husband laughs at me because he loves jazz. But to me, the way they slide in and out of their notes, I'm like, pick a note. Just pick a note and sing it. The vocal sliding, small doses.
Okay.
But I love everything. I listen to some classical. I listen to the 40s standards. I grew up on Nat King Cole and Bing Crosby because that's what my dad loved. And I love them too. And so do my kids, the 60s music, Beach Boys, Beatles. My guy growing up was Barry Manilow. I tell Vic, you had your Beatles. Well, he's 5 years older than me. I had my Barry Manilow. He has all the Beatles albums. I had all the Barry albums. It was just Barry was my guy. And he would tell those story songs. And when the new album came out, I was there buying it and listened to it over and over the day it got here, same as he did with his Beatles. So love Barry. Country music, I don't listen to a lot of it today. And I've started to push myself when I'm listening to the Sirius, 70s on 7, 60s,
Yeah.
70s, 50s. I got to get away from the NFL network because I started listening to that last football season and I've just hooked. I listened to it all day long.
No kidding.
Anytime I'm in
I
the car,
had
I've got the
no
NFL
idea. That's
network on.
that is great. I had no idea. NFL.
49ers fan.
Okay.
Yeah. And Vic is too. Back to Joe Montana. Loved Steve Young, Jerry Rice.
Roger Craig,
Yeah.
Jerry Rice. Yep.
Yes. And my ex-husband was a Dallas fan. That's probably one of the reasons that it didn't work.
Yeah.
Through the early 90s when that was that big thing, some of those games were rough.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, those were the rivals right there, Dallas and San Francisco. Great goodness.
Yep. I have a 6-foot cardboard cutout of Steve Young.
Wow. Number 8.
I used to take
That's
to the
awesome.
office.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Gosh.
he's still in the shed somewhere. I pull him out for certain dances.
I really like watching that guy and Joe Montana and that whole bunch.
Yeah, Joe was Mr. Finesse and Steve was Mr. Grit. They were so very different, but both great for San Francisco. I'm excited about Brock Purdy to see what he can do with the whole season. We'll see. But this is about square dancing, not football.
No. And you caught me off guard. I would love to talk football, but we won't tonight.
But yeah, I find you can find when I'm listening to music, a lot of times is with the intent of would this work for square dancing or not. And always looking for new stuff. I've picked up the Pulse and some of those others and found a couple of songs that way, that I cut very quickly. Jason Mraz's I Feel Like Dancing was one that I was just listening on the way home from class. I'm like, holy cow, this is brand new. It was released a month ago. It's on the top 10 already. And it's a great song, we find songs on commercials.
Yeah.
We've done songs off of 2 Samsung commercials. That Butter Patter, that BTS K-pop song, was on a Samsung commercial. That's where we heard it. We watch TV and Vic will turn to me and say, "This'll work. This'll work." But then you take the nugget. I took that Butter Patter and put that popcorn in the middle of it. Just a little Easter egg that people go, was that other song?
Yeah. Okay, I remember that. Popcorn used to be everywhere. Great.
Yep.
It did. So traveling around, and I ask this a lot because I've had a couple lately for myself, a venue that really stood out to you? I mean, we do most of our calling, whether it be in a elementary school, a senior center, a Y, a gym, and they're all nice. But any place just stand out to you, whether it be outdoor, indoor, anything like that?
I'm gonna give you three.
Okay, go ahead.
The first one is local here. It's called Cowtown Square Dance Center.
Mhm.
It's one of the places that I first went dancing locally. There used to be classes there every night. It is owned and managed by square dancers. Originally, it was a biker bar. And as the biker bar, it was called Cowtown.
Okay.
So they didn't give it that name for square dancing. They just retained the name from the biker bar. And over the years, it's burned down 2 or 3 times or had fires and had to be rebuilt. But at one point, they pulled in a floor, a leftover floor from a bowling alley. I mean, there's just all kinds of history in that hall. And in one corner, they even had a melted piece from the drawer where the silverware was with melted spatulas and things hanging on the wall from the fire.
Oh my
But
gosh.
they're not allowed to have stoves in there anymore.
Makes
They have
sense.
a fridge and a microwave.
Cowtown.
But
Okay.
it's just a nice hall with a little stage, and it's for square dancing, and it kind of feels homey to
Mhm.
me because I grew up in my calling world with it. The second one is up in Northern California, I think Santa Rosa. It's called Monroe Hall.
Mhm.
And I had heard about this hall before, and it's got a beautiful wood floor, so much interesting decoration all around, very eclectic, from country to primitive, just all kinds of decorations around it. And the stage is in the corner. It's really odd place to call or cue from. I was cueing the night that I was there. Vic was calling, but I had heard about this hall up in Northern California where if the caller made a mistake, they would ring a bell. There was a bell on the stage, and they would ring this bell that hung from the ceiling. And at the end of the night, if they hadn't rung the bell, you would get a Nobel Prize because you had called without missing a corner or making a mistake. And so I had heard about this Nobel Prize. So when I went to the hall, the bell was still there. I don't think they're still using it so much anymore, but it was still there.
That's fantastic. That's a great idea. The Nobel Prize.
Nobel
The
Prize.
problem, if I called there, you wouldn't be able to hear me for the bell ringing. So it would just be a constant bell ringing in the background. They'd be like, what time is it? Good Lord.
Yeah. And
What's
then
your
the
third
third
one?
one is up in Big Bear, where I have my chic weekend.
Okay.
It's an indoor outdoor place, and it's just it's my happy place, and to be able to do both things I love in the same place is like dreams coming true.
Big Bear. That's really good. So in all those venues and all the you're traveling around and even local calling, anything stand out to you that just happened that was funny to you or dancing or anything like that?
Funny?
Yeah, any funny stories?
Well, when you there's a couple things that come to mind. There's a long running joke with David Mee. So Vic and David Mee went to the same caller school way back.
Okay.
Vic was like 17 or 18, and David was 8 years younger. So, or 6. Anyway, David was like 11 or 12, and Vic was in his late teens. And back then, the caller school was 8 weeks on a Saturday, and they would come. And the funny thing is, David's wife Dawn went to high school with Vic, and they were all dancing. They all knew each other back then. And at that, Dawn and one of her friends were there with Vic as his partners helping to dance. And so it's funny that Dawn was in it too for this long running joke. But one of their assignments was every week come in with 2 new singing calls. And that way, when class is over, you have 16 for your show, your repertoire. And 11-year-old David would come in every week and sing Tie a Yellow Ribbon twice. And so every week they would have to listen to him tie a yellow ribbon. So now for 40 some years, there's this long running joke with yellow ribbons and at one point, I wasn't in the picture then, but Vic wrote up new words. Please never sing that song again. And on his knees, I'm begging you. And so when shortly after Vic and I were first married, Don and David lived around the corner, and they asked us to watch their house while they were on vacation, and we left yellow ribbons all over the house,
that's awesome.
trees everywhere, and that began it. And it's ongoing. I don't know if you noticed, I posted last week, David had subbed my class the week before, and he had done tie a yellow ribbon. He called so I could hear it while he was singing it. And when I came in last week, they were all wearing yellow ribbons.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
So I lined them up, took a picture, and took a video of them saying, "Yellow ribbons for David me." So I turned it around on him, but it's just, this yellow ribbon is ongoing. And the first time he came in to record for Chic, he wasn't on staff yet. He was just doing a guest vocal. And he went into the booth, and he'd been practicing the song. It was Let's Get Away From It All. And he puts on the headphones, and we say go, and it's Tie a Yellow Ribbon. So we had the engineer on it. And
Very
he starts singing, he sang through the whole song without missing a beat.
It's a great song. The original
Very
song,
good
I
song.
love it. Yeah, that's
It's
great.
almost worth recutting just to get him to sing it.
Sure. He as well. I like that. Tie a
So
yellow ribbon.
the other one, Patty told you about, because I watched that a little bit.
I was going to bring that up. Go ahead.
I am going to bring it up because it's hilarious. We punked Tony so bad. So she told you about how he punked her first time in the studio and made her listen to a track that made her sound really bad. Engineers have so much power. You have to take care of your engineer. And I bring food and lunch. I take care of my engineer because he can make you sound good or not. And they really messed with Patty's head. So this is many, many, many years later. And Patty, just as a joke, as she told you, she sent Jimmy this horrible track along with the others. And Jimmy's like, well, fine. She only sang the opener. And it was so bad. I can't even tell you. I'll play it for you in a minute. It was so bad. And Jimmy took that opener and laid it across all 7 sections of the song. Even the parts where it didn't match, because we had a chorus and a verse, and she sang the verse over the chorus with our background vocals with this horrible vocal. And so we sent it to her. She thought that was funny, which it was. So then I sent Tony an email and I blind copied Patty on it. And I think she told us she'd been having some rough times. Work was kicking her butt. Things were just going on. And the previous song, she hadn't been able to record for me. So I ended up doing it. So I sent Tony an email. The subject was, "Is Patty okay?" And Tony didn't know me as well then. You know, people see me and just think I'm quiet and easygoing, and, you know, and I've got a sense of humor that just lies dormant sometimes. But anyway, so I sent this to Tony and said, "Is Patty okay?" I said, "Patty sent me this vocal, and, you know, last time she couldn't do it because she was, you know, not doing well." But I said, "This is what she sent me. I'm not sure I can release this." And I attached this track and blind copied Patty. So we're on the phone laughing. And I'm like, okay, Tony's on the phone. It wasn't 10 minutes. He called. It was hard just to let him suffer for 2 minutes as he's trying to say, "You can't release that, Shauna." "I know, Tony, I can't." And finally, I'm just cracking up. And I'm like, "Tony, it's not real." And part of me wants to go, "How on earth could you have thought this was real?" She starts with, "I know her cowbell." There's no cowbell in this song.
Oh, that's so good.
And he said some choice words and hung up on me and called her. But we play this now for fun. Do you want to hear it?
Yeah, absolutely. Play it.
Let's hopefully you can hear this okay. Let me, my mouth's working. So you'll hear her say, "I need more cowbell."
Okay.
For ladies, chain over and back. I need more cowbell.
Do you hear?
Circle left, I got rhythm. I got music. Then saw right one time around. Element left and we.
It gets worse.
You can hear it perfect.
Got good times. No more bad times. I got my God. Who could ask for anything more?
It's just.
Oh, it's fantastic. It's the best. I'm trying not to say fantastic all the time as much as I do, but that is fantastic.
But when it's fantastic, it's fantastic. He
Uh,
called me. I'm like, I wanted to say, how on earth could you have not known that was a joke? But my
especially being
email set
Tony.
him up. Is Patty okay? You know, I'm worried about her.
I think I'm going to see Tony in August. I'm going to go to the campground in August. I've got to bring that up. I had no idea until she told me about it last week. And it sounds even better than when she told me what I expected. And I will attach that. You're going to send that to me. I'll attach that at the end of this video. Hopefully it'll be just as clean. You can hear everything.
Everyone knows Patty is a good singer.
She
Patty
is. She
can
really
sing.
is.
And when you can hear pitch and sing correctly, it's painful to sing it wrong. It's hard to sing it wrong. So I'm impressed that she could be that bad.
Is she even
on purpose?
I can't remember because we talked a little before and during the podcast, and she brought that up. She said, "Do you know how hard it is to sing off key like that?" And when you don't normally do it that way. And I was like, no, because I've never tried to do it. Now I've probably done it not on purpose, but but no, for somebody as good a singer as she is to do that it really sounded.
Which is why it was when she sent it to us, and then we just took it to the perfect place with Tony.
It is, and
got him back.
Tony, I mean, whose life is revolved around music, square dance music, producing music, making it, to hear that, and especially he knew her. If it was somebody he'd never heard of, he'd be like, yeah, I don't know what's wrong with that.
Yeah.
So since it was Patty.
They're friends, and he had been worried about her too. So, we took advantage of a perfect situation to punk him really good.
Oh my goodness.
I have another secret vocal.
Okay, what is that?
The first time, it's Tony. The first time Tony sang for Chic, he did a beautiful song, "Till There Was You," and from Music Man, but we covered the Beatles on this song, and he gave me a beautiful vocal. And Jimmy was explaining how he could change a vocal, my engineer, and he said the worst thing you can do is make it just a little sharp and a little ahead of the beat. And so he did it on purpose to Tony's vocal to show how those tiny little changes can really ruin a song. It's painful to listen to. And I actually did let Tony hear it once, but that one has not gotten out.
Oh, okay.
It's in my back pocket if I ever need it.
Yeah, you may need it one day. Just hang on to that. That is good.
We've done some outtakes tracks too. So maybe I'll send you one of those.
Okay.
For your ears.
All right. Yeah, I won't put that one out. That's fine.
The studio is a fun place. That's all I gotta say.
Oh, that's great. Now, and part of that, you help out. You do some teaching at the GSI school, and you've done your own school with the recordings and all that. Are you looking to? You said your favorite spot is teaching. Are you looking to go into the caller coach and take that all and kind of go forward with that? What's your plans?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I do love to teach. Teaching is I just love it. Hang on one second.
Yeah.
Can I call you back, or is it an emergency? Oh, okay. I didn't get the other message. Okay. I'll call you later. Bye. My brother-in-law, who rarely calls, so when he calls twice, I'm like,
I understand. No problem at all.
Okay. All is well. That second call was to say, ignore the first call. So it's okay. So what was I saying? Oh, the coaching. Yeah. I reached out to Tony before Jackson.
Okay.
And actually it might have been before Spokane. In fact, it was, and then Spokane got canceled. And this was at a point where Tony actually got on my case over something, rightly so, because he gave me an opportunity that I didn't take, and I had my reasons for taking it, for not wanting to take that opportunity. But he talked to me later. He's like, look, you've got to, when we give you these opportunities, you've got to take advantage of them. You are the face of Chic. We're all promoting for you, but you've got to be that face. You've got to be out there. I'm like, okay, I'll put myself out there more. He doesn't understand how hard just singing in front of people is for me.
Okay.
But I've gotten better. I mean, people hear the vocals and other things, and they just don't realize I went from I wouldn't sing without Vic. I mean, it's been it's a path, and I'm still growing in that space and learning to be confident there. But in front of a class, my confidence is there. So I told Tony I would love to come coach at the school if you'll have me, and he said absolutely. So I've been at 3 now, and Jack said track your hours. So Jack has been kind of mentoring me. So yeah, my goal is to become an ACC, and I'm trekking towards that. It's one of the reasons I came and visited the school that you were at with the total in Nashville.
Yep.
That was fun. I went and sat in on Wade's school the following, a few months later. And then this year he's asked me to partner with him. So it's been really fun and rewarding.
Outstanding. That's good to hear, especially for somebody who enjoys teaching as much as you, whether it be teaching square dancing or colors. That's really a good spot for you, for sure. Now, in that regard, any little lessons, bits of advice for callers, whether it be somebody who's thinking about it or somebody a few years in like myself, or just any callers, just some advice.
So this is a Pat Carnathan joke. When I told him I was thinking about calling and I was starting to call, he said, so when's your lobotomy scheduled? I'm like, okay, whatever. I would say get into it for the right reasons. Get into it because you want to enjoy it. Don't expect too much out of it. And find the right mentors. And when you're starting to call, the mentor is everything. Someone who will give you good feedback, not just blow smoke and roses, but tell you the truth when the truths are hard. And when it comes to performance, you just have to be yourself. You can look and see. When I started, as a female caller, I could look around and there weren't a lot, especially on a very national level. Mm-hmm. And, I would look at Dee Dee and I would look at Deborah and Patty and talk to Vic about it at length, because here's a little secret. I was going to tell you before and I didn't, but at the time I started a call, I was not a fan of female callers. I just prefer the male voice. I prefer, and so I'm like, how do I want to be what I don't even care for? And I know there's some people who felt that way. And I have figured out, what, I needed to get past that in my own hand, or I can't present and be the right kind of caller. And I've had enough positive feedback now that, I'm far past that. But at the time, it was my own hurdle to get over, to say, how can I be what doesn't really even appeal to self, and find ways to make it appeal to me first, So find the right mentor. Don't try to be somebody else. You can find people who are doing things musically that you like. Choose music that speaks to you. For me, it's not just because of the label, but music is everything. Mm-hmm. There's power in music that you won't find anywhere else in the world. And if you don't believe me, watch a commercial. If I say plop, plop, fizz, fizz, someone's going to sing, oh, what a relief it is. Yeah. You can't help it. Music theme, movie themes, those things, you can't help it. Music has power. A song comes on and it just takes you exactly right back to a certain point in time, because it's imprinted on you. We all have our own musical histories as well as everything else. So use the music to your advantage. Music that appeals to you and that would appeal to your dancers. There's a magic in the music, and have fun. If you're not having fun, it's not fun. It's challenging. Take risks. Launching Chic was a huge risk, but with huge risk comes reward. I've been so blessed with people who supported and mentors along the way, Yeah.
And I was, like I said before, keep doing it. Chic Records is fantastic. I really enjoy it. Gotta go. Fantastic. It's a great label.
I enjoy it too. Now, didn't Marcia sing with you on Baby It's Cold Outside?
Yeah. And I should have practiced more, because if you listen to that, I mess it up a couple times. But we may revisit that one day. She did sing with me. She likes to
That's
sing.
fun.
I've tried to. I picked up a couple of songs a while back from Gold Rush, and one of them is "Mama's Broken Heart," and that's
Okay.
one of her favorite songs. It's a country song, and
Okay.
and I'm trying to get her just to do the singing. And I said, I'll do the patterns. You can do everything else. I haven't pushed her that way yet. I don't know if I can get her to do it.
Okay.
I may have wasted $7. I'm not sure, but we'll see. I could probably get her to do "Poor Pitiful Me" though. She is a Linda
Okay.
She's a big Linda Ronstadt fan. Of course, I have to get it first, but let's see what else I can say. Great advice for callers, and absolutely keep going forward with the accredited caller coach. I look forward to taking more GSI schools with you and other caller schools. If you come toward the East Coast, at least get into the middle of the country somewhere.
Life goals, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do this with everybody, and and you've listened to some of the podcasts, a lot of them, so you know kind of what's coming. And I'm putting it all together one day. I'll write down a lot of stuff so I can put together a little book about it, or a little bit of I don't know, writings. Your favorite movie well, first of all, what's your favorite movie? And not to lock you down, but if you were just thinking, I love this.
Pick a day. There's so many, but
Mhm.
I come back to a lot. Mr. Holland's Opus.
Wow. Okay.
Random, isn't it?
It is.
I mean, I love a lot of movies. I love the Star Wars things, all of those things, old musicals. But Mr. Holland's Opus just struck me the first time I watched it. And every time since, I know it's coming at the end, and it still gets me. And I'm not one that likes to cry at movies, especially if it's a sad cry, but this kind of touching cry, I embrace it when I watch this movie. If you haven't seen it, it's about a guy, Richard Dreyfuss stars in it, who is a musician, writes and arranges music, and takes a job as a high school teacher to pay the bills. It was going to be a summer job, or while he wrote this composition, and it goes through the different decades of the school, so you hear different generations of music and the different students that he touched along the way, and then his wife and his son, who of all things is deaf. So the thing he loves, his son can't hear, and it's a beautiful, moving movie. And of course, music and its impact is baked into it, which is one of the reasons I love it.
I've never seen it. And for whatever reason, I am a big Richard Dreyfuss fan. Of course, Jaws. I didn't think about the Mr. Holland's Opus. But one that he was in, and I'll probably get the name wrong. I think he was in Greece on a bus trip. I cannot remember it now. It was a few years back. I'll have to think about that. But I'll go back and watch that, Mr. Holland's Opus.
I highly recommend. It'll just take you through the years of music and the time period, and also, it makes me cry at the end every time.
Okay, not to spoil it. Okay, it's okay. I just want to say Richard Dreyfuss doesn't die in the end, does he? Because I don't want to watch that. Okay.
No, he does not.
Okay, if that's not the reason. Okay, I don't want you to spoil it, but that's fine. Okay. Okay. Titanic or Poseidon Adventure? What would be your choice?
Neither.
Neither. Okay.
I've never seen either one.
You've never seen the Poseidon Adventure with Shelley
Winters, Ernest
Borgnine.
Yeah, no, I know it, but I've never seen it.
And you've never seen Titanic, as big a thing as that was at one time?
No, I was over the song very quickly, and I knew how it ended. I mean, I would joke, I'm like, 3 hours? I even started to watch the beginning one time, and it just didn't grab me. So,
when that came out, that was still VCR tapes, and we would go and rent it. And when my son, I forget, he was young,
right?
Yeah, it was 2. And after he watched it one time, when we would go rent it again, he would just watch the second one because that's when the boat's starting to sink. He could care
Okay.
less. He could care less about the beginning with the whole love story part of it.
Forget that.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Here's one that's really good, I find, with the square dancing community. Footloose or Dirty Dancing?
Singing in the Rain.
Singing in the Rain. Very nice.
So between those two, Dirty Dancing, I've watched it more times. I enjoy the dancing more. Kevin Bacon was great. I mean, it was a great movie. Both are great movies. But I like Patrick Swayze more than Kevin Bacon. And, the period that it's set in, and there's some good music in it too.
Yeah.
So
I lean toward Footloose just because I was around high school when it came out, but Dirty Dancing with Patrick Swayze and Jennifer Grey, really good story. Probably a better story than the original Footloose.
I like them both, and John Lithgow was such a good
Oh
bad
my
guy.
gosh, John Lithgow's my favorite.
I was so blown away when they did Third Rock from the Sun and how funny he was after playing the bad guy so well.
Did you ever watch that? There's a TV show called Dexter. It's not on anymore. It had about
I did. It was on Showtime. My kids watched it, but I never did.
He was a serial killer like in season 3 or 4. Just great work. John Lithgow, one of my favorites too. So, Braveheart or Gladiator?
Haven't seen either.
I was going to say, have you seen them? Okay.
Nope. And I haven't seen The Patriot either.
Another Mel Gibson, The Patriots. Pretty good. I've probably watched that once or twice.
Yeah, if we're choosing between Mel Gibson and Russell Crowe, then I'll say Maverick.
Okay, Maverick.
Mel
Okay.
Gibson.
If the opportunity arises, watch Gladiator. If you have the
Okay.
choice, watch Gladiator. Really good.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I started asking some, but I guess I know the answer now. What's your favorite pastime sports-wise?
Yeah, football.
Football?
I mean, I'll watch some baseball, but there's something about the game of football. In the last few years, I've embraced it even more. And for the last 2 years, I've been listening to the NFL Network during the season, and then I listened to it this whole off season. It's amazing how much there still is to talk about.
Yeah.
But I just can't wait for season to start again.
Now, you said you took clogging and everything out there. And so did you grow up in California, born and raised?
I was born in Utah, but we moved to California by the time I was 3. So I grew up in Southern California, yeah.
And so you've been a 49er fan the whole time?
Yeah, well, I didn't really get into football until later.
Okay.
And it was around the time Steve Young was going to San Francisco. Joe was still their guy, but
Right.
Steve was there, and I'd kind of followed him from his college football some. So, and at that time, the Rams were in St. Louis, so we didn't have a team, and Raiders were here for a while, but no.
Yeah. Okay.
Raiders. And so 49ers became my team, and they've had some good years and some bad years since then.
Yeah.
They beat San Diego in the Super Bowl, but that was a few years ago.
Yeah. I did not know. That's why I do this podcast. I had no idea you were that into the NFL. That's great.
I just love to watch the game. I used to be, I cared about who was playing. Now it's just so fun, and maybe I should get into fantasy football, but then I'd probably care too much. The athleticism that goes on and some of the plays that they make is just there's beauty in it, which is weird, but there really is. I was rewatching the NFL channel was replaying old games, and they were playing the playoff game last year with Cowboys and the Niners, and that was the game where Kittle bounced the hand off his hands, and then it hit his helmet, and then his hand, and he still caught that thing. I'm like, how did he?
Oh, that's good.
I had seen it before, and it was cool all over again.
Growing up, born and raised in Georgia, Savannah, and then in Atlanta now, I've suffered through Atlanta Falcons for my entire life. But being in the South, the Southeast, huge college football fan. And I
Oh.
follow all the Southeastern Conference and all that. So I love football. I played it up until 8th grade, and of course, you've been around me before. I'm about 5'6" on a good day. And when I hit 9th grade, I thought I should probably play football. And the first day of school, I was like, nope. All these dudes are way bigger than me now. And I went to an all-boys school, so it didn't help. So
Okay.
I walked in the smallest, and I graduated probably the shortest of the bunch. So
Wow.
my football career ended in the 8th grade. So
So which college team? There's a whole bunch of them in the South. It's big down there. Which one is?
yeah, of course, living in Georgia, it's always been the Georgia Bulldogs, not so much Georgia Tech. I like the Southeastern Conference, of course. Lately, Alabama, because just Nick Saban. I love Nick Saban, so I'm a big Alabama Crimson Tide fan. But if I had to, if they all played at the same time, it would be Georgia, just because I'm here. I've never gone to any of the schools, but I just love the surroundings. I could watch those games on TV and just see the crowds. I love the SEC and the Georgia Bulldogs.
It was a playoff game. It was Joe Burrow's last year in college, and so it was Clemson and LSU.
LSU, yes, ma'am.
Well, Tigers, right?
Yep, LSU Tigers.
Playing each other, and so that was my introduction to Joe Burrow. And now his name just left. Trevor Lawrence.
Trevor Lawrence, yep.
Because he was at
From
Clemson.
Yep.
I just loved watching the way they carried themselves at that game. And then Trevor played one more year in college, I think.
He
and
did,
Joe
yeah.
went on, and then got injured right out the bat. But it has been so fun for me to watch Joe Burrow from that game to where he is now, and how he changed. He turned things around at Cincinnati.
Yeah, such a good NFL quarterback, and hopefully Trevor Lawrence gets out of Jacksonville at some point.
Yeah, he feels like he's growing into it. Last year was a much better year, and he's talked about his confidence issues. And I tell you, being someone who does that, Rick Hampton, when I've been in the studio, he's like, I don't know if I can do that. He's like, you can do that. And he's like, stop thinking. You're in your head. Just get out of your head. You're messing with your own mind. And then I've heard the phrase, in your head and you're dead. And that's true. You just got to get out of your head. He's got to get out of his head too.
Yeah. Gosh, Sean, that's awesome. This is the best conversation. I love talking sports. I wish I'd have been more prepared for it. I didn't think about it tonight. So, in matter of fact, Trevor Lawrence is from Georgia. He's from Cairo, Georgia.
Okay.
Cairo, Georgia. How do you Cairo, but it's Cairo. And so I had the opportunity to see him on like the highlights at the 11 o'clock news plays, and when he was in high school, and same hair and everything. And they were like, "Who is this kid?" But he was what he was in high school. He was the same as he was in college, dominant.
Yeah.
But yeah, LSU. I was a big, when you watch those games and it's Saturday night in Baton Rouge, and just there's no other place like that. So that is great. Well, growing up, and now Pat Carnathan said yes to all of these. If you had to choose beach, mountains, desert, or the plains, where would you be?
Mountains.
Mountains.
That's not going to surprise anyone.
Okay.
My happy place, I can look out my window and I can see the mountains from here. We grew up camping up in those mountains, fishing at Big Bear, and it's just when I need to get away, it's an hour up the hill, and it's 20 degrees cooler. And now my dad bought a boat in 2019. And now that he's gone, we still have his boat. And so it's docked up there. And so we can just go get away. In fact, that's what the message from my brother-in-law was about, something about the boat. And the second one, it wasn't his boat. It's all good. So I can't wait to hear his message. And that's why, I always wanted to do some square dancing thing in Big Bear. There used to be a square dance club up there. And then there used to be a big weekend up there, but that venue is no longer available. And so 2018, we did our chic weekend up there for the first time. And that was this October would be our 5th one. And so that's like a dream come true for me to have square dancing up in Big Bear and have people come and bring my whole staff.
Very nice.
We just have a great time.
So it's July now, obviously. And in about 2 weeks, I think I'm in Tennessee at the Tennessee State Convention. What do you have coming up for the rest of the year? Any big stuff going on?
Well, in the first August 6th, we start the Caller School with Wade.
Okay.
Wade and I are doing the advanced singing call school.
Okay.
And we've got 8 students coming in. They've got their songs picked. Most of them are done and finished the syllabus and the schedule for that. I'm really looking forward to that because, I get to coach.
Very nice.
And I sit in last year and kind of teacher's aide, and then I must have passed because he asked me to partner with him this year.
Good.
And anytime you can partner with Wade, there's so much to learn. It's just, again, I pinch myself sometimes. These legends, Tony and Wade, and inviting me to come out and play, and like, how, this is my life. And it's just so fun. They've been so welcoming and so supportive and helpful. So I got that going on. My Big Bear weekend is in October.
October, okay.
Yeah, October of this year. And man, if anybody wants a trip to California, come on up. We got great callers. Joe's Hotel's coming this year. Steve Moore, David Me, Deborah and Patty and John Jones. What did I leave out? Anyway,
Okay.
Great time. And then this one isn't solid yet, but I had an invitation to go to Japan and teach a seminar. So I'm crossing fingers that works out. It would be in 2025 if it does. Okay. So that's kind of fun.
Very nice. Have you called in Japan yet?
No, I've never been to Japan.
Okay. Japan. From what I hear, it's a memorable time. Go ahead.
I talked over you. What'd you say?
No, I was just saying, I hear that Japan's quite memorable if you get the opportunity to go over. So.
Yeah.
So you were in Europe with Vic?
I don't get out much. Yeah, Vic called in Denmark and Sweden shortly after we got married. So I went over with him. And so that was fun. We got to see some things over there, as in addition to the square dancing. So that was fun. But beyond that, I don't travel too far from home unless I go to a Callerlab or a Nationals, and then I see hotels and restaurants and the streets in between.
Yeah.
And I have a great time.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to have it has to be enjoyable. It's one of my best memories so far. I wish I'd have started years ago. I didn't know about it, obviously. But I've had nothing but good times at Callerlabs and conventions and state, national, that type of stuff. And meeting everybody, that's for sure.
Yep.
All right. Well, Shauna, can you think of anything else you want to talk about right now?
I can't, other than to say thank you for doing this.
It's been fun to watch
some of the others, and I can see you taking notes. I know you've got more going on too. So
yeah, I do, and like I've told a few people, I still got a bunch of people I want to talk to, but at some point I'd like to go back and revisit. So I'm trying to keep notes on everybody, and that way we can talk, a while from now. And two, anything coming up like, but right before Big Bear weekend, stuff like that, anytime you want to talk about something, I'd love to do this to kind of, because like we talked beforehand, I want to, people know you. You've got chic. You're out there. You're doing the teaching and the calling and everything, so people know who you are. But there's a lot of callers out there that don't get out, don't go places. So this for them, as much as you and other callers like yourself, just to get you out there. I'd love to use this platform, for lack of a better term, for you to promote stuff. Hey, I've got 3 new singing calls coming out. I got a new pattern coming out. A caller school, and once you get your caller coach stuff, hey, I got a school coming up. Love to do that. So I absolutely want to talk to you again. And at some point I'll sit down. I'm not a very good writer. I don't know. I guess that's the best English. A very good writer. But I'd like to put together stuff from all this and say, hey, I talked to all these people, and this is what this person said. And your words of advice, I write all that stuff down, and hopefully I can put it together for some caller that's 10 years old right now and decides he wants to call 10 years from now. So who knows?
Right. Charlie started at 11. It could happen.
Yeah,
C1,
absolutely. Oh, my
right?
goodness. Yeah. C1, Charlie Robertson. He's awesome. Shauna, it's been a pleasure. Like I say, this is going to come out on Friday. I'll have it all set. And for everybody that's still listening at this point, I'm going to include a recording of Patty Green at the end of this. She's agreed to let us put that out there. It's just going to be a snippet. That way nobody can record it.
It's not her real vocal.
Yes, no, it is her going after Tony. That's what she did. And Shauna to begin with, because she didn't tell Shauna about it.
That's right.
That's awesome. Shauna, it's been a pleasure. I don't know when we're going to cross paths again. I mean, Callerlab for sure, National Convention for sure. But I don't know if any of that's the rest of the year, because I've got Tennessee, and that's the last big thing I've got.
Yeah, I think March.
But if it's not, maybe we talk before March. I don't know. But either way, it's been a pleasure, Shauna. Really enjoyed talking to you.
Go Niners.
Learned a lot. Go Niners. Absolutely.
Except when I can't root for your Falcons when they're playing my team. But other than that, thumbs up.
It's hard for me to root for the Falcons sometimes. Shauna, it's been awesome. I'll talk to you soon, okay?
All right.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
For ladies chain over and back.